All right, I want to finish up the topics in chapter 11 that I'm going to talk about. We've talked about two models of oligopoly, Cournot oligopoly, Stackelberg oligopoly. We've characterized them as duopolies, just setting them up with two firms, but we argue that we could extend our understanding of the model to multiple firms. And we'll do the same for the last two models that we'll use. And so our third model of oligopoly is called Bertrand duopoly, and we'll take a look at that. So Bertrand duopoly is named for Bobby Joe Bertrand, who was a third baseman for the Cardinals. And in Bertrand duopoly, products produced by the firms are similar. They don't need to be identical. So there's some differentiation between the products of different firms. The firms compete using price. And so that's different from what we've seen before. And they choose their prices simultaneously. And so this is a simultaneous price setting game. And how does it work? So, well, we have two firms in this case, since we're going to think of it as a duopoly. And our two firms set prices P1 for firm 1, P2 for firm 2. And so what happens is that we assume that consumers have perfect information about prices, about what's available to them. And so firm 1 wants to be able to sell more than firm 2. So firm 1 sets its price below firm 2's price. And what happens is that consumers, because they're well informed, only buy from firm 1. So firm 2 sells nothing. How does firm 2 respond? Well, firm 2 reduces its price until price for firm 2 is less than the price for firm 1. At this point, firm 1 sells nothing. The entire market goes to firm 2. How does firm 1 respond? Firm 1 reduces price until its price is lower than firm 2. And so they're essentially batting a ball back and forth, but they're thinking about this, they're doing this simultaneously because each is able to anticipate what the other faces. And the question is, how far will they lower prices? At what point do they stop? And what we'll say is that each firm will reduce price until price is equal to marginal cost. They don't want to go below marginal cost because then they won't be able to at least earn a normal profit. So each firm reduces price until price equals marginal cost. And in equilibrium, price 1 equals price 2 equals marginal cost. So that's a pretty simple model. It's an interesting model. It's very much like Cournot duopoly, except for the fact that firms are competing on price instead of quantity. And when firms compete on price, there's much more fluidity in the way that the market responds. The market, we assume the consumers will always just buy from whoever has the lowest price. And the firms essentially chase each other down until they get to the lowest price that either can bear, and that's going to be marginal cost. And what can we say about this? Well, we can say that in equilibrium, both firms charge a price equal to marginal cost, and this is socially optimal. Okay. Since price equals marginal cost, we get the same outcome here that we would get in a perfectly competitive market. So that's a very different way of thinking about duopoly. Now, if you think about these firms, we've assumed that they have the same marginal cost. If one firm has a cost advantage, if one firm can produce at lower cost than the other, then it will be able to force the other firm out of business. It will be able to capture the entire market by setting its price at its lower marginal cost. The other firm can't get down there and will lose the entire market. So that's Bertrand duopoly. It's not complicated, and it gives us a very different result than what we see with Cournot or Stackelberg. And our last model of oligopoly that I want to talk about is what's called collusive oligopoly, or in our case, collusive duopoly. This isn't named after anybody. It describes a situation in which the firms collude with one another in the way they operate. Okay, a collusive duopoly is often referred to as a cartel. And so a cartel is when oligopolists get together and try to run their market as though it were a monopoly and then split the proceeds. So what's going to happen here is that the firms agree to cooperate with each other. They will act as though they're a single monopoly. And then they will split whatever profits they can earn. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Imagine that we have a situation where we have two firms. All right, so there's a market demand, maybe looks like that, and marginal revenue that looks like that. And let's suppose that there's a constant marginal cost for all firms in the market. And what we would expect is that if this were a monopoly, the monopoly quantity would be here, and this would be the monopoly price. Okay, but there we have two firms, and so what the firms do is they get together and they say, look, let's coordinate ourselves. Let's set price as though we were a monopoly. We'll restrict quantity as though we were a monopoly. And what we'll do is we'll split the market up into two pieces. This will be the quantity that firm one produces, and this is the quantity that firm two produces. Okay, and so we'll each sell the same quantity, we sell at the same price, we each earn the same revenue, we have the same costs, and so we each have the same level of profit. And in this picture, each of these rectangles shows the profit that a firm would earn. Okay, so this is a cartel, and these firms agree to operate this way, and we know that if they're able to keep other firms out of the industry, there's nothing that will upset this. That is, we would expect them to be able to continue to have this profitability well into the long run. But there is a problem. And the problem is this. There is a mutual incentive to cheat on this agreement. Okay, and the nature of this incentive is sometimes referred to as a prisoner's dilemma, and we'll talk more about prisoner's dilemma when we get to game theory. I'll just point out that this is a prisoner's dilemma. So here's the problem. Firm 2 looks at this situation and they say, think about this in terms of oil production. Think about OPEC, which is an organization of petroleum exporting countries. And historically, OPEC has gone through periods where they've been very disciplined and they come up with, they don't split output equally. They split output in proportion to their ability to produce it. But what happens is they meet several times a year and agree on how much each member of OPEC will produce. And they set quantity in a way that where they're trying to control price. They can't set price and quantity. They have to choose one. They set quantity, hoping that that will get them to a price that that they like, that is going to be profitable for them. But what happens is that typically within OPEC, somebody decides that they can do better than hold to this agreement. Why? Well, these are countries, and somebody gets into a war and needs more revenue so they can finance a war, or they decide that the leaders of the country decide that they could line their pockets a little bit if they had more revenue. Who knows exactly what the rationale is? But in this case, we could think about country 2 saying, if we could get a little bit more revenue, we'd be better off. And so what country 2 might do is this. They might say, let's produce a little bit more. This is what we agreed to, but we're going to cheat and we're going to produce a little bit more than what we agreed to. What are the consequences of that? Well, when they produce a little bit more, the price drops a bit. But look at what happens. When the price drops, this country gives up this much revenue due to the drop in price, but it gains all of this due to the increase in quantity. And so you can see that for country 2, if they produce just a little bit more, it's going to boost their revenue, and that gives them an incentive to cheat. What's the consequence for country 1? Well, country 1's not happy about it because as the price goes down, all they do is lose revenue. Okay. The problem is, this is a world market. It's difficult to tell exactly who's producing too much and who's forcing that price down a little bit. It's difficult to know. OPEC doesn't have this picture up on the wall. So it's difficult to know exactly why the price is lower than it before. And in fact, that gives country 2 some cover. They can increase production, increase their revenue, and maybe not even be found out. What about country 1? Well, country 1 goes through exactly the same thought process. If we produce just a little bit more, we'll lose this much revenue, but think about all the extra revenue we could earn. So each member of the cartel has an incentive to cheat on their agreement. So the prisoner's dilemma involves a situation where there's an agreement that's mutually beneficial to everybody, but each member who's agreed to this has an incentive to actually cheat on the agreement. And so cartels are notoriously unstable. And the reason they're unstable is because there's always an incentive for one member of the cartel to cheat and to cheat its partners. It's actually one of the things that makes OPEC as remarkable as it is, because OPEC has been in existence for many decades, and they go through periods of having a lot of adherence to their agreements, and then they go through periods where various countries are cheating, but they always seem to pull themselves together eventually and get everybody back in line. So they haven't fallen apart because of cheating, but they have lost revenue because of cheating. And so that's collusive duopoly, which looks to be an advantageous way for firms to organize, but turns out to be unstable because of this mutual incentive to cheat. So that gives us 4 different models of oligopoly. Right? We have Cournot, which is a simultaneous quantity setting game. We have Stackelberg, a simultaneous quantity setting game. Bertrand, a simultaneous price setting game, and collusive duopoly. Okay? And so those are the 4 types of oligopoly that we will focus on in this chapter, and we've covered them, and that's it. I will do a couple problems, and I will get that posted as soon as it happens. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.